several people that are not available at this time who are interested, and we would like
Great.
to share whatever it is we discussed today with them.
Great. I've just turned on the recording.
Yeah, there might actually be a few more. There might still actually be a few more people that'll show up.
Oh, great. No problem.
Yeah, because it's still.
Time.
So
yeah, they should be able to just sign straight in. Zoom changed their policy recently and changed the settings. And I remember a couple of weeks back, some people tried to get into a meeting I was running and they couldn't get in. So I hope I fixed that.
We live in very rural Kansas, and while we are not the poorest county in Kansas, we are next door to them. And
okay.
so resources are finite and stretched thin, and this COVID business has really exposed some gaps that aren't being covered.
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
a
yes.
local currency.
By the way, I'm Tana McCarter. I'm her neighbor.
Oh, right. Welcome.
Tana.
Well, an alternative monetary system or a local currency are great if the money is short on the ground. I mean, from my point of view, one of the most negative aspects of the mainstream monetary system, which is bank issued and bank controlled, is that we the people don't have control of that system. So we can't issue money. And that's a massive issue. I mean, if we can't issue money to cover the needs of the people in our community, then that leaves the community without a medium of exchange and ostensibly poor. But when I used to go around the country giving talks and lectures and presentations, one of the things I used to do was I used to ask people to, right at the beginning of the meeting, to list all the skill sets that they have, and if you had like 20, 30, 40, 50 people in the room, I'd find out that even though people were talking about themselves as being a poor community, the actual number of skills that people had were amazing, but they couldn't exchange those goods and services and skills because money was short on the ground. So an alternative monetary system is a great way to fix that, because then you're not relying on an external banking institution to provide you with the money you need to be able to exchange your goods and services, because you organize to do it for yourselves. So that's one of the biggest advantages right out of the gate of an alternative monetary system. Up in the Pacific Northwest, where I used to live, I've just moved to New Mexico, and I'm talking to people in New Mexico about joining Fourthcorner Exchange. But back in the Pacific Northwest, where I lived for 20 years, people exchanged over $1.6 million worth of goods and services between each other. And that's an amazing number. And it's one of the largest numbers of any alternative monetary system. So, the alternative monetary systems, there's three really. There's Fourthcorner Exchange, there's the one up in the Northeast run by the Schumacher Society, I can't remember the name of it, and they've actually got a printed currency. And the third one is a printed currency in Ithaca, New York, Ithaca Hours. So those are the three very successful alternative monetary systems that I know about in the world. I know there's lots more. I know that there are many alternative monetary systems in South America, especially in the poorer places, and they work really well. So yeah, it's definitely a way to empower yourself and for everybody in your community to empower themselves. So what kind of questions do you have? What do you need to know?
Do you find that people do not realize the skills they have? They think they have nothing to offer.
Absolutely.
And trying to talk to people about this, that is probably my biggest issue, is they believe that they don't have anything to offer. I'm like, you're breathing, you know.
Yes, indeed. This is a big problem. I grew up in England, in London. I'm a city boy, really. And my paternal grandparents, my grandfather fought in the First World War, and he was promised a land fit for heroes when he returned in 1918, when the First World War finished. And he came back to the north of England and married my grandmother, and he went through 20 years of the Great Depression. Now, this is a man who was a master gardener. Anything he touched grew. So he would go around his neighbors' gardens and show them what they needed to do to improve the quality of the soil. And his vegetables were amazing. Everybody always used to say to him, I remember when I was a kid growing up, people used to say to him, Bill, how do you grow those carrots? How do you grow those onions? You know, how do you make your fennel grow, and so on? And he was always telling them, giving them advice and information. But he didn't come back to land fit for heroes. He came back to 20 years of mass unemployment and abject poverty in a poor rural area in north of England. And I wish that people had known about this alternative back in those days for my grandparents' sake, because they were both lovely people. And here is this man with this incredible skill set, and he's giving it away for free. And he and my grandmother were starving, and my father was born in 1926. So my father was brought up as a kid during that Great Depression. So I grew up with all these stories and tales and all this information. So that's one of the things when I was 15 years old that motivated me to find out, well, what is really going on here? And what's going on is there's no shortage of skills and you know, people have amazing abilities, but it negatively impacts their self-esteem and their self-image and how they feel about themselves and how they see themselves when they can't exchange those goods and services in a free market. And if you can't do that, then you're going to feel like, oh, I don't have anything of value to offer, and therefore I must be worthless. And so your self-esteem and your self-confidence drops tremendously in this kind of situation. Again, I set up two alternative monetary systems, one many, many years ago in 1990 in London, England. And I set up North London Let's, that's what it's called. And then when I arrived in the USA in 1998, 1999, somewhere around there, I moved to the USA. I married an American many years ago. And when I got to Bellingham in Whatcom County in Washington State, north of Seattle, I started talking to people about alternative monetary systems. And I found the people out in the county had a similar kind of image. They were like, well, we don't have anything of value to offer other people. And so I did the same thing. They were like, the first meeting I ran in Bellingham, there were like 50 people there. And I got people to go around the room and talk about all the things they've done during their lives. And there were literally hundreds of skills available just from those 50 people. And I have this habit of carrying a clipboard and a pen. And so I started writing down a list of all the skill sets, and I got someone else to write them all up on a blackboard as people went round. And then when people had finished and everybody had spoken, I pointed to the blackboard and said, look, these are all the skills that you have available in your community, but you're not trading them. You're not exchanging these goods and services. And why? Because you don't have money. You think you need money, bank-issued money, usurious bank-issued money, in order to exchange your goods and services. And of course you don't, but you have to know how to trade outside of the mainstream monetary system. And that's what I taught them to do. So it changes people's self-image. Go ahead.
Yes. So in your program, do you just do services? You said goods and services, but do you exchange physical items or just services?
No, we exchange physical items too. The car I have out of my driveway is a Nissan Sentra 2005 in really good condition with just two previous owners. I know both the previous owners, a good friend of mine back in Bellingham and her daughter. And I bought it for, I think it was like $200 before I left Whatcom County. So no, people buy and sell all kinds of stuff. So I bought my last car using life dollars, which is amazing.
That is amazing. So when you get your community built up, that's the kinds of things that you're able to do.
Yes. I always tell people, start small. Don't try selling something really big to begin with. You know, do very small things and then gradually build and build and build, because that shows people how the system works and how to negotiate prices and stuff like that. The other thing you can do is you don't have to use life dollars exclusively. You can do a trade like 50% national currency and 50% life dollars, or any combination, 25% national currency, 75% life dollars, or 100% life dollars. When my friend Dawn, when she said she had a car for sale and she was thinking of selling it through Fourth Corner, and I said, that sounds great. You know, I'm actually in the market for buying a car. And I said, how much do you want? Do you want a half in life dollars and half in cash? And she was like, yeah, that's what I was thinking of doing, like get half in national currency and half in life dollars. But when I said, well, I'd like to buy the car then, she was like, oh, you know, for you, I'm going to sell it to you for 100% life dollars. So
Life dollars.
there's an awful lot of goodwill that you build up with your friends and your neighbors and the people in your community over the years. And I always tell people goodwill is one of the key aspects of this system. It's what makes it work.
You use the life currency as your unit of exchange. And I know a lot of other exchanges use the time, an hour, as their unit of exchange. So how does your life currency compare to like a time dollar?
That's a very, very good question. When I set up North London Let's in London in 1990, I was still kind of at the beginnings of setting up alternative monetary systems and learning about them. And we in London, we chose to make the unit of currency equal to a certain amount of time. And we valued it according to the national currency, British pounds, in the time. And as the years went by the time I moved to the USA, I realized actually that this is a mistake, that in fact, it's better to not have the limitation of making 1 hour of your time equal to 1 hour of my time. I'm a professional person. I'm a therapist. My wife is a therapist too. And to be honest, when you're exchanging an hour for an hour in a time-based system, the problem is that because I've got years and years of training that I've done, I have to charge more per hour than someone who's doing, say, basic manual labor. And also my overheads are more than, you know, someone who's just doing manual labor or something that's more basic like that. So if you're a professional person or you've got skills that, you know, people usually charge more for, like doctors and surgeons and lawyers and so on, you need to be able to charge more per hour. And back in London, what people did was instead, you know, even though that officially the system said that, you know, every hour, everybody's time-based exchanges are worth the same, and everybody's hours worth the same. What people used to actually do in London was they would, the doctor, we had 2 doctors on our system in London, they would charge 6 times the normal rate. And they always had to explain to their patients why they were doing that. And they said, it's because we're professional people, we have to charge 6 times the normal rate, otherwise we can't cover our costs. And I think that's reasonable. So trying to mandate that everybody's time is worth the same, I think is a bit unrealistic. So when I started Fourth Corner Exchange in, I think it was 2004. Yeah, 2004, that's when we actually started trading. We actually had a community discussion for a year before we launched the system. So we actually started talking in 2003, and for 1 year, everybody who was interested would come to the meetings, and everybody expressed their views. And I said, I don't think, you know, I personally don't want to do a time-based system because I don't want everybody's hour to be worth the same. So what we came up with was a definition of what a life dollar is, which is equal to 1 hour of your time at a basic living wage in your community, because 95%, 98% of all the trades are done locally. And so that definition was a brand new experiment in terms of alternative monetary systems. And so we thought we'd give it a try and see how it runs. And everybody I've spoken to in Fourth Corner Exchange says that it runs better than time dollars. And a few people in the Pacific Northwest had traded in Ithaca, New York, and had used time dollars, and they actually preferred our system, which to me indicates that it's a success, it works. So that's why we don't use the time-based system in terms of valuing the currency.
All right. Well, that sounds, I mean, I've never heard that example because most of the time banking systems or information that I've read just says everybody's hours equal.
Yep.
But I can understand how that could on some level create a little resentment for those people who have put in a lot of time and effort and national dollars to
Yep.
get an education to do that. So that seems like a reasonable compromise. Yeah, make it to, it would be a 1 hour of a basic living wage.
Yep.
So that's going to be different for a professional as opposed to somebody
Yep.
that's not got an education in that. So what do you think, what do you think you've done in your program that has made the Fourth Corner Exchange successful?
Oh, without a doubt, what makes it successful is running new member meetings and introducing people into the system personally. So every month in Whatcom County, we would run a new member meeting, and anybody who was interested, who'd heard of Fourth Corner Exchange, who wanted to find out more, would come to the new member meeting. We made it a potluck, so people would bring some food and drinks, and we'd hang around for half an hour, eating and drinking and talking. And then I'd run a formal, like 40-minute introduction to Fourth Corner Exchange, and I'd give the basic history and explain how an alternative monetary system is different from the mainstream monetary system. And basically, it's a cooperative economy. Instead of a competitive economy like we have in the mainstream capitalist world, this is a cooperative economy. And cooperative economies are fundamentally different from competitive economies. In other words, instead of everybody working against each other competitively, in a cooperative economy, you're working collectively for the common good. So it's a completely different mindset, and the way people behave in a cooperative economy is just completely different. It's the complete opposite. As an example, I've seen people, this is a good story actually, back in the UK many years ago when I started North London Let's, a good friend of mine worked in the City of London, and I tell you, he was a lovely guy. We used to go out to the pub and drink a lot and spend a lot of time together. But he was a cutthroat, selfish, greedy son of a bitch. And if he was trading with you on the trading floor in the London Stock Exchange, he would do everything within his power to screw you for every penny he could get out of you. I mean, absolute cutthroat. I mean, he was a master of it. He went on to make millions of pounds, which is like great for him, you know, fantastic. But he saw me doing North London Let's, and he was like, what are you doing? Why don't you come and join me in the City of London? And I said, no, I'm interested in a cooperative economy instead of a competitive economy. Anyway, for 2 years, he lambasted me and said, you're stupid, it's a waste of time. But then he saw this community, this amazing community build in London. So after 2 years, he was like, can I come to one of your new member meetings? And I was like, oh no, I don't want this guy at my new member meeting. Anyway, he talked me into it. So I said, okay, you can come to one of the meetings. I didn't believe what happened. He loved everything I said, absolutely everything. He said, I want to join. And I thought, you don't belong here. You're not going to fit in, you know? Like, I just don't trust you. And he was like, no. I understand the principles of this. And I think it's good. And I want to be part of this system. I was like, okay. And all my friends knew him. So they were like, you let him join? And I'm like, I can't stop him from joining. We're a cooperative. It's up to the other people, you know? If he behaves badly, we can throw him out. But hey, do you know, he was one of the nicest people on the system. And so he became Jekyll and Hyde. In the City of London, he was like Mr. Hyde, you know, and in the North London Let's, he was this lovely, sweet, he was giving away a lot of his time and energy and skills and giving people absolutely excellent investing advice and showing them how to play the stock market. So he became this like split personality. I couldn't believe it. And he did really well, and people loved him. They absolutely loved him. He charged a lot of local currency for his services, but my God, he was worth it, you know? And he helped people make a lot of money by playing the stock market in London. So there you go. That's a very good example of like one of these amazing contradictions of human nature, you know? When people are in the competitive economy, they behave in one way, and when they're in a cooperative economy, they're almost the complete opposite.
What do you do with bad apples?
Yeah. So Tana wants to know, what do you do with bad apples?
That's a very good question. In all the years we've been running Fourthcorner Exchange, we've only had one person that was a problem. And it turned out she was actually mentally handicapped, and I didn't know that at the time. She was not in Bellingham. She was over in Port Townsend, which is like across the stretch of water up there. And yeah, let me give you the example from North London Let's, because we did have someone join the system in North London Let's where he was actually a criminal, and everybody knew he was a criminal. And he wanted to join, and initially I said no. He came into my office actually in London, and he said, I want to sign up. And I said, come to a new member meeting. So he came to a new member meeting, and the forms were there to sign up. So he filled in the form and he signed up. Now, I took that form back to the management group because I said, look, this guy is a known criminal. Are we going to let him join? And we had a legal representative who said, well, technically, our new member, the agreement that we make, the new member agreement, he said, well, if we don't let him join, he can actually sue us. So we let him join. But because we were a very tight-knit community and everybody knew he was a criminal, nobody would trade with him. He'd call people and say, can I do this for you? Can I do that? And people were like, no, I'm not interested. So for like 4 months, everybody ignored him. Eventually, this little old lady decided that she would take a risk, that she'd actually, you know, employ him to do something. He was advertising himself as a building contractor. And she knew the risks, she understood what she was doing, but she wanted to give him a chance. So she did. And she wanted a greenhouse built in her garden. So this guy showed up and he built this greenhouse. And we all kind of waited to see what would happen. She paid him in local currency. And 2 months later, at the first time it rained really heavily, you know, the thing started to fall over and collapse and fall to pieces. So she'd wasted all her money, her local currency. And she'd paid some national currency for the parts. Well, the first thing is, if someone does a deal like that and they really screw you over, you can actually write your feedback about the exchange of your goods and services. And so she wrote up exactly what happened. And so he got a very bad reputation for that. But what happened next was really interesting because she'd spent a lot of local currency employing this guy, taking a risk to invite him to come into the system and actually work with goodwill and work in a cooperative kind of way. So 2 things happened. Firstly, when he went to spend his local currency, because of the write-up that she put on the database, nobody would sell their goods and services to him. So a month later, he came into my office and he was very angry. And what he didn't know was I used to teach martial arts, so I wasn't scared of him in the slightest. And he was banging his fist on my table and saying, you have to force these people to accept my local currency, which I've earned. And I said, no, I don't. Go back and read the member agreement. All trades are voluntary. Nobody has to buy or sell anything whatsoever. So I filled him in on the legal side of it. So that was the first thing. He couldn't spend his local currency, and he never got to spend a penny because everybody knew his reputation. But the second thing that happened was completely unexpected and really shocked me in a very delightful way. A lot of people started talking about, you know, the local currency that this woman had spent to get this greenhouse built, and they chipped in local currency. And they paid her back. They said, you shouldn't carry the burden of taking the risk of letting this guy into the system. We want to give you some local currency so that you don't lose out. So she ended up getting all the local currency that she'd paid to this thief returned to her. And then people said, do you still need your greenhouse? And she said, yes. So they got a small group of people together and they rebuilt her greenhouse for free. Now that's the level of cooperation and goodwill that you can build. It takes a little bit of time. It can take, 6 months, a year, maybe a year and a half. But if there's goodwill there to start with, then it happens really fast. And this kind of local currency enables people to work cooperatively instead of competitively. And so it really changes your mindset, and it changes your idea about what money is and how to use money. So that's a very good story. Otherwise, in all the years I've been doing this since 1990, those are the only 2 cases I've come across where people abuse the system. And the lady in Port Townsend, we simply, I went back to the management group and said, what do you want to do? And they said, well, she's not all there mentally. She's handicapped. So, we'll have to just cancel her account and leave the fact that she's run up this huge commitment. She spent a lot of local currency and she hasn't earned anything. And they said, well, just close her account and tell the people in her area to keep an eye on her and look after her because she needs help, because she doesn't really understand what the system is. So those are the only 2 cases that I know about from my own personal experience.
So what is like the minimum membership number that is needed to really get started? And we're in a very spread out area. We have a lot of smaller communities that are within 20 minutes of each other, 30 minutes of each other. And a lot of people in each community, or several people in each community have expressed an interest. But we're so spread out, so I think we need a larger membership number to get started. But what do you think is a good membership number to really get started?
That's another very good question. So long as you're within 30 minutes driving of each other, if you can get 30 to 35 people, that seems to be roughly the minimum number. If you have less than 30 people, you don't have enough of a spread of goods and services for the system to really work and be viable. But as soon as you get above 35, that's somehow the magic number. There seems to be enough goods and services for the thing to become kind of like self-reinforcing. And that's when it gets really interesting. The most difficult part is getting the first 35 people to sign up. You have to put a huge amount of energy into getting that first 30 to 35 people signed up. And then after that, the whole thing becomes a lot easier. You still have to put some energy into it and you still have to run the new member meetings. But yeah, the whole thing becomes more self-sustaining and workable. So you need about 35 people to make it to work, especially if you're spread out a little bit. You probably need 35 to 40 possibly. So what I would do is organize a new member meeting, and I'm happy to do like a 20-minute video, which would be an introduction to the Life Currency Exchange. We're transitioning from Fourthcorner Exchange to the Life Currency Exchange, but that's another whole story. Let's just stick with the Fourthcorner Exchange for the time being. By the end of the year, I'm hoping that the whole system will be called the Life Currency Exchange, and I'm going to be shifting the database and all the information to a new domain name. But I'm happy to do a 25-minute introductory video, and then you can talk about that amongst yourselves and put forward the idea of like, hey, how about we all sign up and see how we can all help each other?
Good, good. That would be appreciated, for real. What kind of organizational structure do you have? Are you tax exempt? Are you not for profit?
Well, technically, we are actually for profit. So we don't have tax exempt status as an organization. But in terms of the trades that people do, all the exchanges are taxable. But what I found, I'm not an accountant by any means, so don't take any of the advice I give you, as being financial advice of any kind. But I had an accountant back in Bellingham, and he said, there's ways that you can legally do exchanges and you don't have to pay tax on them. And I was like, what? And the laws in America, I discovered, are very different from the laws in the UK. In the UK, you had to pay tax on almost everything, but there were some things that were exempt. So I think, and on what I've discovered since then is every state is different. So I think you'd have to do some homework and find out what the situation was. However, there's a book I've got here by Thomas Greco called Money. I know Thomas, he lives over in the Northeast. And in this book, he talks about the tax status of alternative monetary systems. And what he says is really interesting. He's quoting several other people. And what he says is that if you go about it in the right kind of way, and if you've got a time-based system, which is what we are, then you don't legally have to pay any taxes on the goods and services that are exchanged. So I'm, like I said, I'm not an accountant and I'm certainly not a lawyer. So you'd have to read the book and find out how that works for yourself. But if you do it right, 90% of the people in the Pacific Northwest ended up not paying taxes, and that was perfectly legal. That's actually federal law. I think there's been like two or three court cases over the years where people were exchanging services kind of across the garden fence, and the IRS took them to court. And on all occasions, the IRS lost. And the defining feature was that they were doing it as neighbors in their local community, and they were doing it on a time basis. That seems to be the crucial thing. So if you're exchanging goods and services using time, then as to the best of my knowledge, American law says you don't have to pay tax on it. But you need to check that out. And if you have an attorney on the system who lives locally, who knows the state laws and the local laws, that's a real advantage.
So how many people do you have administering your program, and are they paid, or are they just getting paid in your live currency units?
Well, the organization itself is really tiny now. Basically, I'm 80% of it, and I pay two other people to do some administration work and some programming work. So we're actually just a tiny little group now, especially that I've moved to New Mexico. I'm hoping that, you know, I'll be able to grow the organization to something that a bit larger than what it is at current. At one time in the Pacific Northwest, we had over 800 members. And the membership has kind of gone up and down and up and down. When the economic crisis in 2008 hit the country and the world, my expectation was that we would grow and grow and grow. And I'm not sure why, but the opposite happened. Our membership went down and down and down until we reached a core member of about 100 people who just refused to stop trading. But yeah, the membership has gone up and down over the years.
So do you think you're going to be able to keep it running in the Pacific Northwest now that you're down in the South?
Oh yeah, I've got a local administrator who knows how to, you know, keep the members up to date with everything that's going on and keep the system running there. And 2 or 3 times a year, she runs a new member meeting in Bellingham. And like I said, I'm in New Mexico now, so I've been talking to people here about bringing members on board. And in the last 6 months, for some reason, like I said, this goes in waves, but some reason the last 6 months, I've had like 30 different inquiries from different parts of the USA and 1 or 2 from abroad also. And people are very, very interested in joining the system. One of the crucial differences we did that I think was a good move when we created Fourthcorner Exchange was we decided, instead of making it a small-scale local currency, we opened it up to the whole of the USA. And at some points, actually, we've still got 2 Canadian members, and we've had members from other current countries be members at different points. So this is actually an international, and to the best of my knowledge, and I've been studying monetary reform for about 50 years now, and to the best of my knowledge, Fourthcorner Exchange and what is going to become the Life Currency Exchange is the only international alternative monetary system that has ever existed, which is really amazing. And we started trading in 2004, so we've been going for quite a long while.
Yes. I think you mentioned, I think, that you were the longest running, and I believe that because of the little bit of research that I have done. A lot of them that have posted that they're there don't actually respond. Like I have emailed quite a few different places, and you're the only one that really responded at all to my inquiries. But do you use an online platform for
We do.
helping people connect?
Yeah.
And what platform would that be?
Well, I'm actually a Linux programmer, so I do a lot of the back-end programming for the database. And when you go to the website, fourthcornerexchange.org, you're actually accessing our local server, which happens to be in California. And so all the trades that are recorded happen through that database. So I maintain the database and the website and everything on that website. But there are quite a few trades that happen between members. Once you get to know people in your local community, people stop using the currency and they start just exchanging goods and services on a sort of like, I'll do you a favor if you do me a favor at some point in the future. And so when people get to know each other really, really well, they actually stop recording the trades. I remember before I left the Pacific Northwest, I was telling people, please do record the trades, because otherwise it looks like there's nothing happening here when actually there's quite a lot happening, but behind the scenes, it's not visible. So once you build up that community spirit, it takes about 2 years, 3 years for people to become familiar and really confident, but those bonds don't break down. So even if Fourth Corner Exchange, the database and the website and the organization disappeared, those bonds would still be there, which is amazing.
Yeah, that is kind of awesome in a way, in a big way.
At the beginning, there has to be some kind of accountability.
Yes.
And I would imagine then it grows into something much
a
more,
trust.
Yeah, much more valuable than that.
Absolutely. And that's when the cooperative economy...
So you created your own online...
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. You've created your own online platform.
Yes. With the help of 1 or 2 other programmers who were also friends of mine. And at the moment, I'm maintaining the database. What I hope at some point in the future, because I'm getting a bit old now, I can hand it off to someone younger who can maintain the database and the website. But I don't think that's going to be a problem.
So what is the steps? Do you have other chapters that have started elsewhere?
Yes, we have a very active chapter in Port Townsend, which is on the Olympic Peninsula west of Bellingham across the water. And then we had another chapter in Seattle, which seems to have gone dormant. But like I said, chapters will go dormant and then they'll be revived again, and then they'll go dormant and be revived again. It's interesting. And that's happened several times. So those are the 3 main places, Seattle, Bellingham, and Port Townsend. At the moment, Port Townsend is actually the most active chapter in terms of people exchanging goods and services and so on. Yeah, and we have a local representative in Port Townsend who runs new member meetings and signs people up and does some of the administration work there, but he's really instrumental in bringing people on board. And, you know, I trained him and showed him how to do that, and he's completely self-sufficient now. So, yeah, I mean, he's doing very well there. He's a permaculture guy, and he really knows a lot about economic alternatives. Oh, permaculture, wonderful.
I'm permaculture. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
So what if we went to your website and signed up? We wouldn't be in the local area of Port Townsend and Seattle. We wouldn't be up there. We'd still be in Kansas. But if we had, 35 or more people sign up here, would that just create a new chapter?
Yes.
But we'd still use the Fourth Corner website?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
that would be better, because we'll never find a computer programmer here.
Well, okay.
Other than Drew.
Well, he's
And
not a programmer.
Yeah.
But,
And if you
Everybody
need
here's
me,
baling hay. We're not.
right. And if you need me to do any kind of introductions, I do new member meetings online. So I could actually run a whole new member meeting online for you, and you could watch and learn the information and learn how to talk to people to sign them up. So I could teach you how to build a local chapter very quickly.
Okay, so you mentioned the new member meetings are a big deal as far as the building up the community,
Oh, yeah.
making it successful. Are there other activities that you've done to also create that community within your program?
Yes. Once you've got the new member meetings in place, you can do them once every month, every 2 months, but I always like to do them as a regular event. Then you can do educational learning groups. And yeah, there's just so many books on alternative monetary systems. There's Thomas Greco. Let me just dig out some of my books here. This is another one by Thomas Greco called The End of Money and the Future of Civilization. And then
Does he have a website about?
Yes, actually, if you go to
restorative
Fourthcorner
money or
Exchange
restorative?
and look at the, oh gosh, I've forgotten which button it is. There's a button there about learning more. And most of these books, this is The Future of Money by Bernard Leatier, who's a friend of mine. I also know Thomas Greco. And there's several other books like those, and they're referenced on the website. So there's a lot of learning materials there. Oh, and the FAQ, the frequently answered questions on the Fourthcorner Exchange website. I have been told by many people over the years that is one of the best FAQs they've ever come across in terms of learning about alternative monetary systems and local currencies. And we put a lot of effort into that, so it really shows. And I also run impromptu seminars. Sometimes if like 10 or more people get together and have a series of questions, then I go online and especially with the internet these days, we didn't have the internet when we founded North London Let's, or actually when we founded Fourthcorner Exchange, but with the internet now, it's really great. I'm happy to give, answers to questions. People sometimes come up with complex questions, and it's good to be able to give answers to them and do that in a group. But actually, this is worth knowing. When we started Fourthcorner Exchange in 2004, we didn't have a website, we didn't have a database. It was purely through word of mouth. And we had a ledger book. And so everybody had a page on the ledger book. And we had a secretary, and you would call the secretary and say, will you give Fred Smith, $5 from my account to his account? And so she'd manually do the exchange. And that's how it went on for the first year and a half. And it wasn't until quite a bit later that I got together with two other programmers, and they said, why don't we just write a database and do this thing online? And I was like, yeah, great idea. So that's what we ended up doing. So we just started off with a ledger book and, someone who took responsibility. That was rotated. Every couple of months, it would move on to a new member. Because it was actually, after a couple of months, people were trading quite a lot. So it became a lot of paperwork. But when we put it online, it just became really smooth.
The two other people that are helping you and yourself, do you earn your life currency for your work?
At the moment, no. We're all doing it voluntarily. But when we had a large number of members, like 500, 600, 700, 800 members, we did pay ourselves a small amount of local currency in life dollars. And a very small stipend cash for some of my traveling expenses, because I used to travel all over Washington State and Oregon and sometimes down to California. And the group decided I should have my expenses paid. So they paid for my road trip or whatever. But otherwise, at the moment, no, we're all doing this voluntarily.
So when it comes to the accounts of the members, do you set limits how negative they can go and how positive they can go in their account as far as how many life currency units they have?
Absolutely. but only in the beginning. Once people have done 5, 6, 7, 10 trades and they start to get familiar with it and comfortable, then you can extend that credit limit and make it higher. But at the moment, we've got a credit limit of about 10 life dollars. So it's very tight. That's about $100 worth of goods and services, roughly. But that's not a lot. And you certainly couldn't do something like buy a car. But what you can do, if you need to extend that credit limit before you've done a lot of trades, if the people in your local area feel that you're trustworthy and they take responsibility for saying yes, then I'm happy to extend that credit limit. Essentially, the people in your area control the local group, the local chapter. So I don't make decisions from wherever I am in the world. I follow what you guys decide. So in a sense, you know, you're actually running your own alternative monetary system and your own local economy. I just happen to be the administrator, and you know, I'm here to kind of like give you the background information and to fill in all the details and to give you some support and encouragement. Over time, as people trade more and more, that credit limit can be expanded and extended. And it took me 2 years to build enough of a credit limit for myself to be able to buy a car, because that was actually quite a large item. So again,
well, in
small.
a situation where,
go ahead.
In a situation where maybe we have a member who has property that they can rent, like a small house or something, where they'd actually be potentially earning a lot of life currency units, how would you deal with something like that?
The problem with the system when you start is that for some people like that who have property they could rent, they can earn a lot more life dollars very quickly than they can actually spend. And that becomes a problem. So what I'd recommend is you start small, do small exchanges, and then slowly, gradually grow the system. If you do it like that, especially if you're a small business, you really need to start small. And in Bellingham, we used to have an organic grocery store. And when the owner came to me and said, I want to bring the store on board, you know, how should I go about doing that? I said, choose 5% or 10% of the price as life dollars and have the rest in national currency. And then as you accrue life dollars, find ways to spend them. And he found that 2 of his employees were willing to accept, like, you know, 30 or 40 or 50% in local currency in life dollars as their pay. And he started like that, and he grew it very slowly and gradually over time, and it worked beautifully. So you have to balance, and he had to adjust the ratio. He went up to about 40% at one point, and then he started accruing too many life dollars, and then he put it down to 30%, and then he found that was about the right kind of figure. So it depends what kind of business you've got, what your income and expenditures are. It varies tremendously. I knew there was another guy who was a mechanic who was doing so much work for national currency that he gave 80% of the price in local currency, which was amazing because I got my cars serviced, you know, and I was paying 80% of the price in local currency, which was absolutely amazing. And he just charged for the parts for the replacement on the vehicle. Like if something, you know, one of my cars needed a new carburetor at one point, and so he charged me national currency for that, and then he charged his labor in life dollars. So for each business it varies tremendously, and it may vary from week to week. So you have to kind of watch that. What you don't want to happen is have too much local currency come in and then you're stuck with it and you can't spend it.
All right. Do you have any other advice that you haven't covered so far about starting an exchange and being successful?
Yes, that exercise that I used to do in the UK and in Bellingham, of getting a group of people together and asking them
Listing their skills.
what they have been doing. I remember there was a 90-year-old lady who came to one of my first meetings in London, England, way back in 1991. And she said, I did my presentation, and she said, well, I think this is a wonderful thing, but you know, I don't have anything to offer really. And this was a 90-year-old lady. And I said, wait a minute, stop. Tell me your life experience. In 5 minutes, tell me some of the things you've done during your life. And so she gave like this 5 to 6 minute, you know, span of everything she'd done in her life. And I had my notebook and I wrote down all these things that could potentially be goods and services or skills that she could sell to other people in the group. And there was like 80 people in the room. And she was talking as if she had nothing to offer the group. And I read that list back to her and said, you know, these are the things that I think you have to offer. Who in this room would be interested in buying one of these skills or these goods and services from this lady? And nearly everybody in the room put up their hand. The poor woman was in tears, absolutely in tears. She was so deeply moved. She didn't realize that, you know, her experience and all the things she'd done and all the skills she had were actually valuable or useful, and that other people would pay to have those skill sets. She did in fact join the system, and she actually had one of the members wanted to make a film about her life, and that's what he did. And he paid her to interview her. And she had an amazing life. I mean, you know, I won't go into all the details, but she became one of the most popular members. People would just want to meet up with her and have tea, and they'd be willing to pay her in local currency to be able to ask her, you know, what was it like during the Great Depression? What was it like when you were growing up as a kid? Because she had, you know, this firsthand experience and knowledge. So do that. Get people to list you know, the goods and services that they think they might have to offer, and just say a little bit about their lives, because it's shocking how many people have valuable goods and services and they don't even know it, that other people would be willing to buy from them. In every community I've gone to, and I've been right across the USA and most of England, and I've given talks and lectures in France, Germany, Spain, and several other places. So many people have so much to offer and they're totally unaware of it. So any way you can bring that knowledge and experience out of people works wonders, and it changes people's frame of reference.
So how do you picture your exchange, the one in the Pacific Northwest, and what you're trying to do in Mexico, New Mexico? How do you think that's going to build in the future? How do you think it's going to work out?
Oh, well, to be honest, I have no idea, but I have a vision of what I'd like to create. What I'd like is some kind of international organization where people in different areas take back their power from the bankers, and they learn how to exchange their goods and services on their terms and in a manner where they're in control and not some external power is controlling their economic lives. So I'm into re-empowering people economically at a local level. And my picture for the life currency exchange for the future is I'm in the process of talking about making a film about this. I've done thousands of interviews, and I've done presentations and given lectures and talks, but I've never actually made a film. And I'm now in conversation with someone in New Mexico about making an actual film about the alternative cooperative economy. So I'm hoping that this will become a global movement. That's my dream. Whether it happens or not, we'll see.
Well, little drops here and there. That's something that I think would be wonderful. Do you have on your website a way for somebody to go in and look and see how you have your platform set up? without actually signing up, or do you have to create an account to see how it works?
You can actually go to fourthcornerexchange.org, and I'm in the process of moving the server from one server to a brand new server, which is more powerful. Let me just pull up the website here. But if you click on offered or wanted, those buttons, what will happen is you will get an insider's view of some of the goods and services that are being offered, but you won't have the contact information. And because you don't have the contact information and you're not a member, you can't actually exchange goods and services. So you have to be able to log on.
An idea of how it works.
But yeah, you can pull up, oh, here we go. I've just pulled up, I've clicked on the offered button. So right now, someone's offering video projects to finished projects. So helping you making video. Under health and personal, there's stress relief sound sessions. And then there's gardening and yard work. Someone's offering to do yard work. Then there's someone offering to do remodeling and construction. So these are all live goods and services that if you were a member, you'd get the contact information, email address, telephone number, and whatever. And you'd be able to call these people and ask, you know, so how much are you building services? What kind of experience do you have in the past, and so on. Someone is under computers. There are different categories. There's like 30 different categories. So under computers, there's digital projector available for use in Port Townsend. So that's Port Townsend Group. And that says Epson digital projector available for use. Wow, that's new. Oh, I think that's Gary. I think I know who that is. Yeah. He's the local rep there. I didn't know he had one of those. Wow. So you can look at these listings and you can look at the offered listings, the things that goods and services that people are offering, and then you can click on the wanted button, and these are goods and services that people want. So there's two sets of listings, offered and wanting. And if you want to earn life dollars, all you need to do is go here and click on the wanted button and find out who's in your area and what kinds of things they need. So I've just clicked on the wanted listings, and someone wants gardening and yard work. They want an automatic watering system. There's another one here, moving, need help moving my belongings. There's household, furniture, someone's looking for furniture. There's another one, food. Someone's looking for meat, eggs, or veggies. There's another one, health and personal. Someone's looking for hair cutting in Port Townsend area. Miscellaneous. Is there anyone in Bellingham with a washer dryer in an outdoor or detached area? So they're looking for a washer dryer. So those go on and on. So once you've signed up, you've got access to all these offered listings and wanted listings. And that's when you can contact people, email them, call them. And there's always members who are very active. And then there's other members who are kind of like medium active. And then there's members who are not very active. So if you come across a listing from someone who's not very active, you might have to like talk to them a while and encourage them to actually re-engage with the system. It doesn't usually take much, but sometimes you have to do that. Kind of remind them of all the benefits of trading.
So are you set up as an LLC or what kind of corporation are you set up as?
Originally, we were actually a for-profit corporation registered in Washington State. And since about 2010, a lot of the original core members kind of moved on, moved to other states, moved abroad, and so on. And I didn't see any need to continue the corporate status. So we just reverted to a sole proprietor. So technically, I'm the owner of Fourthcorner Exchange, and I'm trading as a sole proprietor. What I'd like to do at some point is actually set up an LLC, but our financial income isn't allowing us to do that at the moment. But like I said, if things continue to grow and expand, that could be something that we'll do in the future. And if we become an LLC, there's something called a B corporation. I don't know if you've heard of that, but a B corporation puts social benefit above private profit. And so their values are so in alignment with who we are and what we've been doing for all these years. I'd like it to be a B corporation. And so we'd be either a corporation or an LLC, but we'd be registered as a B corporation, which means we're here for the social benefit, and private profit doesn't really come into it.
Right. So do you set yourself up so you really aren't making a profit every year?
For the last 5 years, I've been paying out of my pocket to keep the organization running. So I'm doing this as a work of service to the communities in the world. Anybody who wants to find out about alternative monetary systems, I have this 50-year history of experience and reading and knowledge, and so I just make that available to people freely. So it's because I believe in this principle so much, and I think we need to switch from a competitive economy to a cooperative economy. So at the moment, I'm doing it for free. But Fourth Corner Exchange, between 2005 and 2010, we did actually make money. And so, you know, we could pay people a small amount of national currency to run the organization.
So thank you so much for your time. I was wondering how we could get a copy of I don't know how that works. Can you just email me the meeting, the recording, or how does that work?
Oh, right. Yes, this is recorded on Zoom. Oh, no, actually, it's recorded on my local computer here. So I can, let me see. I'll put this up on one of my web servers, and I'll send you a link, and then you'll be able to access it. But you'll need a username and a password.
Right.
I'll use your email address as the username, and I'll email you a password, and then you'll be able to log in and access the video. Please feel free to download it so you've got a copy of your on your own computer, and yeah, show it to whoever you want.
Great. Thank you so much, Francis.
Yeah.
I was like so nervous about this meeting.
Yeah, she's been very, 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 very uptight about this meeting.
But I'm glad it's gone off really well, and I'm grateful for all the information that you've given us.
Excellent, my pleasure. It's been lovely talking to you both.
We're both charitable-minded people, but this is a way we can still have those things and it be with dignity.
Exactly.
And so nobody loses their sense of worth and dignity.
Yeah.
Exactly. Good. Great.
Right.
It's been a real pleasure.
Good deal. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Have a wonderful day.
Oh, you have a wonderful day too. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Oh, that was fun.
All right, well, I have several people that are, that I would like to